What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer for this episode, Logan Landers, and joining me here today to talk and answer the question about how will Kalen DeBoer perform in year one, his first year as Alabama head coach. Here to help me answer that question today is my good friend from the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network, Jay McLovin. Jay, first off, how are you doing today on this Friday? And also, how is Kalen going to do in year one?
Yeah, well, Logan, we made it to the weekend, so life is pretty good. Uh, yeah, Kalen DeBoer, man. First year taking over for Nick Saban. It's going to be unusual. It's going to be weird. There's only one Nick Saban, like Kalen DeBoer said, so I don't expect to see anything that resembles Nick Saban out of him. I expect to see maybe a little bit, but honestly, he's a new guy. And he's not trying to come in and be safe. He's just kind of coming to be himself. And at Washington, I think he was 104-12. So I think, he's spoken volumes for who he is as a coach. He is coming to the SEC. It is a different animal from where he came from. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. Now, they did have the second best draft class at Alabama behind Georgia. So they got off to a pretty good start. They have five stars, 17 4-stars, and six three stars, and the 29 commitments that they got. So these guys are off to a good start. Sarkisian said it best. It's the best thing you can have as a college football coach is depth. And I think that's what Alabama is trying to do over there is to provide them with depth. This guy comes from Sioux Falls, Fresno State, and of course in Washington. And, as you can see, he's worked his way up those ladder rungs pretty well. He was 25-3 last season and in the national title. This is the guy that helped develop Michael Penix when Penix looked like he was having a rough time out there. I believe it was Iowa, correct me if I'm wrong, Logan, that he came from via the transfer portal. So, am I right? Is it Iowa? I might be wrong.
No, Penix came from Indiana.
Indiana. I knew it was an I, one of those I states. Anyway, Indiana. Not that that's any better than Iowa. I mean, whatever. But he definitely resurrected that man's career at Washington. So that's a huge thing to keep in mind as to how well he develops young talent. He's already fitting in. He loves the chemistry that they have, the love and the trust for each other that they have, and what they developed in that culture at Alabama from Nick Saban days. All he really does do is come in and pick up where he left off with Washington, continue to develop those guys out there, and I expect to see big things from the Alabama program. Logan, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned. I think the thing about Kalen DeBoer is he's someone who's worked his way up the ladder. Right, this wasn't anything that was given to him off rip. He's earned every position he's had. He went to a small school, as you mentioned, and kind of was an on-campus legend, you could even say, in the mid-'90s for Sioux Falls at the Cougars. Had a lot of records there as a wide receiver, very talented. Did some work out there, and then signed to help on in the indoor football league. A guy who, if you need some motivation, a guy who started off in the indoor football league and is now at one of the perennial schools in football history before he even reached 50. So very impressive. Like you said, the work that he did, even before he got to Washington was super impressive. Helping out Sioux Falls early on for a couple of years, and then he went around, and then helped out with Fresno State. This is his coordinating job. Helped out at Fresno State, Indiana, just in more recent times. Like you said, Fresno State is a head coach. Also, Washington was really, and that's the thing too. He only stayed at Fresno State for a season from 2020 to 2021. Then he stayed at Washington for a year from 22 to 23. So it seems like, and just from a track record, everywhere Kalen DeBoer has went in recent memory, and this is recent, has had immediate success and has looked really solid come year one. Obviously, you talked about how Washington did last year. You had Michael Penix on the team, who was a Heisman candidate, who was drafted in the first round, who was just, a really solid player. and someone that he helped resurrect, and someone who was highly recruited, had a lot of hype around him. Injuries just derailed that early on. But then he really wrote that ship, and my God, he made that team look great last year. So I think that when you look at Kalen and the team he's got around him at Alabama, we're not going to go too in depth at it. I know Jay mentioned the recruits only because we did a team preview on them already, I believe, which you can check out on our channel. But I mean, just hitting on some of the good guys, on the main guys they got, obviously. Quarterback Jalen Milroe is going to be huge. Kobe Prentice out there at the wide receiver spot. You like Caden Proctor, the big guy up front. And then you got really solid guys over on defense as well, like Jahad Campbell, Malachi Moore, Devontae Smith. I mean, it's a solid program, obviously. It's Alabama. You know what you're going to get. You're getting a lot of good players, and it's going to be a good team nonetheless. And I still think – when I look at this Alabama team, to me, Jay, and like you said, think of the shoes that this man has to fill. I mean, it was just announced earlier today. I mean, if even a couple hours ago, that they're going to be putting Nick Saban's name at the stadium there in Alabama. It'll be Bryant-Denny Stadium, but it'll be like the Nick Saban Field. So, so I mean, obviously, the man has some pretty large shoes to fill, coming over and taking over the job for Nick Saban. So so it's officially going to be called Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So that's how it's going to be. It's going to be known. Though I think said they're going to unveil that officially, probably with some statue or whatnot earlier, a little bit later on in the season. But I still think that Bama is a good team. Obviously. I still think that obviously with the extended schedule, the extended playoffs now, going to 12 teams instead of the 4, that's better for them. And I mean, when you look at their schedule, Jay, it ain't a walk in the park. Early on, those are your easy. Your first 3 weeks, I'm expecting wins there. That's against Western Kentucky, USF, and Wisconsin. But Jay, it all comes to a halt. It all comes to a collision point come week 4. Because that is when they welcome the Georgia Bulldogs to Tuscaloosa on September 28th. That's going to tell me if this team's ready or not for the limelight.
Absolutely.
Because in recent years, Georgia has kind of taken over as that top dog, no pun intended, out there in the SEC.
Right.
So week 4 is going to be telling. Then you got a couple of weeks where you should get some wins. You should beat Vanderbilt. You should be able to beat South Carolina. Tennessee is always kind of questionable just because you never know how Tennessee is going to look against the team. Either look like they're on level with them or it'll be a train wreck. So you can't really call that. Missouri, that's going to be another good game because, God, Missouri was really solid last year. So that's going to be another tough matchup. LSU, but this one's also going to be LSU on the road. So that's always going to be great. And then you end out the year against Mercer, easy win there. Oklahoma in Norman, the brand new kid on the block out there in the SEC. How are they going to do? And then, of course, we all know the Iron Bowl on November 30th at home against the Auburn Tigers. Yeah. So when I look at this team, Jay, I think they'll make the playoffs. And I think that, of those few losses, I could see them. I say they would lose. I think they'll lose 2. I want to go 2 or 3. I'm stuck between losses because I think Georgia. I think for me, I think Georgia still has the upper hand.
Right.
I'm even tempted to go with Missouri, perhaps, only because Missouri looked so sharp last year. And then I think, either Oklahoma or LSU might pull one out also. And Auburn, it's just a shot in the dark because you never know. So I only see this team losing 2 to 3 games. I would say at max. But I still think they're going to make the playoffs. I still think they're going to be ranked the top 25 team come the end of the year, and that they will compete for that college football playoff championship in that larger bracket. So I expect Kalen DeBoer to come out and perform really well year 1. I don't expect any early struggles because, like I said, they have 3 weeks to tune things up and work out any kinks they got before they got to go and face Georgia. So we'll see how they look. But overall, I think that Kalen DeBoer, year one, I think it would be a success because he's proven in recent years that that he has a knack for having teams do well on offense. He's a hardworking guy, and he's kind of in the shadows in a sense of. I mean, I know we're going to talk about the SEC Media Days here in an upcoming video, but you didn't really hear much from this guy. You heard more about Nick Saban, which I feel like that's going to be the comparison, obviously, for a while. But my thing is that if the board comes in, does great, does a good job, then all that talk will just go by the wayside, and we'll start looking at him and more people, more platforms like us and whatnot. They'll be giving him the respect that he deserves because he's earned it. He has done a great job so far, and I think that will continue at Alabama. Jay, do you have any other final words here before we get out of here today, my friend?
Yeah, like I said, this is going to be a really big time year for the SEC because you got Oklahoma and Texas coming in, and we'll talk more about those at Media Day. But I'm just saying it's going to be everybody's going to have their plate full. Texas is going to have it, Oklahoma's going to have it, Georgia's going to have it. Alabama's going to have it. I mean, you're going to see this affect a lot of things and how we go forward because Georgia hasn't had to play Oklahoma and Texas and all these other guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that unfolds. You get a little more Sarkisian coming back to the SEC. So I'm really looking to see what Bama does. I think, like you said, I think 10-3, something like that, is able for those guys.
And we will see what happens, but we want to hear from you, though, our fans, how will Alabama perform in year one under brand new head coach, and that's going to be weird to say still, under Kalen DeBoer. So we want to hear it in the comments. Once again, thank you all for tuning in, watching us every single week, and also thank you to Jay for coming in and helping me talk about this topic here today. I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Guys, until next time, we'll talk to you again on another live episode.